Okay, last month, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law two bills that stand as ideological purity tests for law enforcement officers in the state. One bars Californians who have been members of hate groups from joining the police, and the other requires police applicants to be screened for bias. Now, you really think that that's going to be fair? Now, to be sure, the law uses a strict definition for the term hate group after there was a lot of pushback, which is directly tied to genocide. But as viewers and listeners know, even the Family Research Council has been labeled a hate group by some on the left, including the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a leftist hate group. And FRC acquired that label. Why? Because we're violent? No, because we follow biblical principles and values, i.e., we believe that marriage is the union of a man and a woman. We believe what the Bible has to say. Now, lest anyone think such laws are confined to California, what was the military vaccine mandate if not a purity test to purge the ranks of those who have deep faith? Joining me now to discuss this is Ben Johnson, senior reporter and editor at the Washington Stand. Ben, welcome back to the program.
Wonderful to be with you, Tony.
Well, Ben, good to see you again. The left often hides their intentions behind misleading rhetoric. Could that be the case here?
It absolutely is the case here. As you noted, that the original bill did not contain the strong definition of hate group. The bill in question, AB 655, originally had no definition for the term hate group. It was entirely at the volition of anyone who wanted to fire someone for belonging to a group that was deemed a hate group. Of course, as we know, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has net assets of $614 billion, lists the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Liberty Council, American Family Association, even the late Dr. D. James Kennedy's ministry as a so-called anti-LGBTQ hate group. And the SPLC's designation of the Family Research Council triggered a domestic terrorism attack 10 years ago this August.
I mean, look, no one that I know of advocates for genocide, not anyone that is Christian in their orientation. And I don't know who would want an advocate of genocide on a police force. I mean, it's the opposite. But can we really trust the state of California to fairly define hate groups in a consistent manner? And when this comes to this testing for bias, I mean, could someone who is in a church that preaches the Bible about human sexuality, could that become a flag that could jeopardize someone's career in law enforcement?
I think it certainly would. One of the laws that was signed last month is AB 2229. That builds on a law that Gavin Newsom signed back in September of 2020 that requires the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training to incorporate a psychological evaluation. Anyone who applies to be a police officer has to undergo a psychological evaluation for both explicit and implicit bias. As we know, implicit bias could mean, for example, they show you two pictures, one of them a homosexual couple, one of them a heterosexual couple. And if you react any differently, they say that you have implicit bias. That triggers certain forms of training. Also, these bills require that anyone who has an allegation lodged against them that they've been guilty of bias has to undergo a thorough investigation by their police department. And if someone has enough investigations, they can obviously be fired just for the fact that they're not productive. But the idea of bias in many of these bills is either ill-defined, not defined at all. And when it is, it's highly concerning. For example, there was a report from the auditor of the state of California where they talked about bias. They looked at 5 separate police departments in the largest cities in California. The example that they produced of a bias was a police officer who posted a meme of the assistant secretary of the HHS, whose birth name was Richard Levine, saying that he was a man. So that's considered disqualifying bias in the words of this report.
I know you've been researching this, you're actually writing on it. I don't know if you've published on this yet, but viewers and listeners who may not be in the state of California might be inclined to say, oh, yeah, that's California, land of fruit and nuts. But I don't think they can dismiss this as just another state problem. I mean, this is something that, you know, we've seen it in our military, this effort to purge people of faith and conservative values. Is this a trend that we need to be watching for?
It's certainly a national trend. As you say, you've mentioned the vaccine mandate. To my knowledge, the Biden administration still has not voluntarily granted a single religious exemption for those who have faith-based objections to taking the COVID-19 shot. And as we know, the vast majority of those which are available, Moderna, Pfizer, were all produced or tested upon aborted fetal cells. So people people of faith very easily would have objections to that, which are clearly Bible-based and reasonable. At the same time, that means that the vast majority of people who are Christian and pro-life would not be able to serve in the military. Effectively, it's a bar to their advancement in that industry, as well as in the police force in California. Then you have the
very troubling. Hey, Ben, we're up against a break. We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us. Great insight. Look forward to reading more about it.